Hey folks, welcome back to the e-commerce leader. We are talking today about the power of partnerships in e-commerce. I think it's something we've all experienced, both the power of that and also some ways that are obvious and non-obvious, which it can go a bit wrong if you don't look out for those. So hopefully we're going to give you some useful insights from the front line. Chats, good to see everyone from across the pond. So I'm Michael Veasley in London, England, where famously, guess what? The Queen died. And we're going to move on from that bit of news now. Carl Hamer and Chris Green and Jason Miles over in America, where the president is, as far as I know, still alive. So we don't need to discuss that. And we are going to be talking about this interesting topic. So, Chris, I know you're the person that suggested this originally, which I think is a great topic. We've all experienced good and bad things with partnerships. Kick it off for us. What do you think is the power of partnerships in e-commerce?
But when we say like good partnerships and bad partnerships, I don't want anybody to come anywhere near thinking it's like a 50-50. Like, okay, it's a partnership and is it going to be good or is it going to be bad? And I think the potential, or people have this kind of irrational or just bad at statistics type fear of potentially having a bad partnership or potentially having a bad supplier or a bad product or bad, and all these things. And like, yes, there are no guarantees that like 100% it's going to be perfect. But in my opinion, and in my experience, doing this for a long time in a lot of different ways, the possibility, the probability of having a partnership go south is just incredibly low. And I say that as someone who's done this long enough that I have had the experience of the straight up stab in the back, right? Not just the you go your separate ways. You're like, oh, I thought you were better at something like that, or I thought you had this connection, like things like that. They're like, oh, it didn't go as perfect as maybe you thought, but yes, like all the way to being stabbed in the back. It's incredibly rare, though, and the only reason I can say that is because I've done so many different things and interacted with so many different people, so many different type of partnerships, whether it's business or suppliers, or just people that I interact with on Facebook and social media and just anywhere in like this Amazon world. It's incredibly rare, but I see people get afraid of the potential negative, like, oh, but what if? What if? Like, I think the example I'd like to use is when people say, "Oh, I'll just draw, we'll draw up a contract to make sure that everybody stays honest." I was like, well, if you're dealing with dishonest people, like straight up dishonest people, a contract isn't going to help that. And if you're dealing with honest people, you don't really need a contract, right? And I think people should think of it that way. And yes, you should have contracts, and reason to have a contract is to lay things out clearly. So if anybody forgets, like, hey, Jason and I, we did this like partnership 6 years ago, and this is how we're going to do it. And like 6 years goes by and we're like, wait, are we like 50-50? Are we 60-40? Like, oh, I forget. So you go back and look and you got the contract so you can agree on it. But the trust is there to we're not arguing about stuff. And it's just easy. Don't deal with dishonest people. And it's kind of easy. But to be honest, there are just so few bad intent people out there that don't want people to be scared of them. In my experience, most of the times where people do dumb stuff is because they're inexperienced, they're young, they're ignorant, they're dumb. A lot of those type of problems, but rarely actually bad intent, like intending to scam, stuff like that. Yeah, that's where I would start it. I don't know if you guys agree or disagree with that. You're still muted, Mike.
It's interesting. I'm glad you said there is a necessity for some kind of agreement. I think that it's interesting what sort of natural fears or objections you have in your mind around it. I've not experienced being scammed by a partner or seen clients you have been, although, as you say, it can happen. My experience is that a lack of clarity and lack of thinking why you want or need a partnership is one key. And I think for me, a lot of it comes down to aligning the structure of what you want with each other with how you agree things. For example, if you're trying to build a business together that you're going to sell for lots of money, that's a very different type of partnership from a supplier who you might choose to stop working with if they get too expensive, right? And it sounds like an obvious thing to say, but I think one default that I see that doesn't work so well is to default to the idea that, for example, you need some companionship and be able to sort things through with somebody, and you have some tactical skills like putting a website together or running a Shopify store or something, and you therefore choose a business partner for that reason. And those aren't the worst reasons, but I would argue that you might want to consider at least getting a coach in to talk to and hiring somebody like Jason, indeed, to put together your Shopify site, which is, those aren't necessarily reasons to have a partner. So I think sometimes people have a bit of propensity to go too quickly into partnerships, which I think can then lead to trouble down the road. So I'm slightly rambling here, but it's certainly something I've seen. Guys, what do you think, Jason and Kyle, before we plunge back into the debate here?
Yeah, I've got a real world example. If I can share it, I think I could share this, and I guess you guys can decide whether we edit this out later. But I'm really super disappointed with a supplier partnership I recently jumped into, and it's somebody who's really well known, Ty Lopez. And I'll tell you the story and then how it disappointed me. He had a sales funnel that said basically, "Hey, I own Pier One Imports, and I'm looking for people to sell all the items on Pier One as affiliate partners, basically, and we'll even build you a Shopify type e-commerce site, and you just have all the products from our store, and you can sell them, and you'll get affiliate commission." Well, as it happens, I have the Happy Gardening Life brand is Instagram primary brand, but I've been looking for a supplier for high-end outdoor furniture, patio furniture, and like a drop shipping solution, and it would be perfect in Ty Lopez's program. It was perfect, man. He said it's the Pier One products, and we'll do all of the fulfillment, the sending out of the items, all of that. And he presented it as the entire, everything on Pier One. Well, the first thing they set up for you was a site that had about 100 products, and they were all candles and little clearance items. There was no access to the outdoor patio furniture, which were items that were closer to like $3,000 and $4,000 per sale. And for drop shippers, the higher price point, the product, the better, that's going to work. So, so I checked in with their customer service team. Oh, I noticed I only have access to 100 of the products. Here's what I was looking for. No reply. I checked a couple times, no reply. So at the end of it, I was left super disappointed because what they presented was not what they delivered on. And it was really frustrating. I thought I had an angle that would work really well. Tons of Instagram followers, 340,000 associated with outdoor, gardening stuff. And yet they presented something that they didn't fulfill or honor. And that was just an example that in the last few weeks, it kind of caught my attention. It really does speak to this whole issue of the power of partnerships, getting in, partnership with the right people, that kind of thing. So I don't know if that's a story you guys want me to include in this podcast, but it's real life. So there you have it. I don't know if you have any opinions about that or not, but that's my story.
I think it's a good story
Kyle.
in the sense
It's
of
real.
you took initiative, or not initiative. You took a chance. You actually stepped up. You entered into a potential partnership, and didn't let the fear of well, what if it goes wrong? Stop you from trying. It's better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like, you gotta at least
Yeah.
try, kind of thing. Like, not every single partnership is going to turn out bad, but that fear keeps people from going into it. And I don't want anybody to listen to this and be like, "Oh, Jason had an example of a bad partnership." Well, you've got many, many more examples of good
Sure.
partnerships. And I think I think about this constantly because I kind of suffer from it. You think about what could happen bad instead of thinking about what could happen good. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if this partnership turns out, yes, it's going to be awesome over here. And yes, there's always that 1% chance. But focus on the 99. It's probably built into our DNA or something. We're risk averse on a lot of things.
Well, what you're describing is the future positive or future negative, current positive, future or current negative, and past positive, past negative thinking. That's all in the Time Paradox book by Zimbardo. And if you're future positive, you're always thinking, oh, how could this work? Future negative, oh, how could it go wrong? And all of us are sort of different in our psychology in that regard. In my example, I clearly realized there was huge upside and the risk was minimal. It was only like $100 to join his program, but he got $100 from me and I didn't get any value out of it. So that sort of sucks.
Yeah. But you learned something.
I did.
Yeah.
You didn't become paralyzed because of it.
You took action. I mean, that's the thing you have to do regardless, right? Whether it's evaluating partners or doing anything, you have to take action and move forward. But it's an interesting conversation too, because how we classify or I guess categorize a partner is also worth a conversation, because when a lot of times you think about partners, you think about somebody who's actually maybe like a legal partner of yours. It's like you're in an agreement or something along those lines. Like you're in an LLC or some sort of business arrangement. But partnerships can have a much broader scope than that, right? Like they can be suppliers. They can even be agencies that are doing work for you. They can be affiliate marketers for you, right? Like there's a whole range of ways that you can partner with people, and you have various levels of that partnership. And I think it's important to really just begin to develop a framework and how you would vet and think through, well, what makes a good partner for me, right? In each of those categories, in each of those cases, and whether or not you really need it, or is that something you take in-house, and maybe you're like, I don't need to work with an external agency as a partner. I'm going to bring this in-house. So there's a lot of different ways that you kind of slice it. And I think having good frameworks of decision making help you with that. So for example, on the supplier side, you want to find, so in Jason's case, he's looking for a dropship supplier. There's a lot of different ways in which you want to try and vet somebody like that. Like you want to think about, well, first and foremost, what exactly are your criteria, right? You got to be crystal clear on what your expectations are. Because if not, and you go with them with kind of murky expectations, they have an agenda as a partner. Everyone has their own agenda, right? And so they're going to try to, sell you into or push you into the easiest process for them, right? But you have to have clear understanding, like, I need this to occur like this, this, and this. And that is a bare minimum baseline. And then you can start from there. Can they meet your initial criteria? Do they have references? One of the best ways, I think, to work with any partner, or you're working with someone new, is talk to people that they've worked before, or by referral. Like get a referral to work with someone that like and trust. How was there, or talk to their customers. Like ask, there's been plenty of times where it's like, hey, I'd like to talk to one of your customers. Can I talk to somebody who's actually hired you for a period of time? And if they're like, oh yeah, no problem, let me find somebody. If they're like, oh well, we don't, and you kind of the hem and haw about it, then I'm a little bit more skeptical when people are like, yeah, no, I don't want you talking to my customers. So, I think there's ways that you can kind of build frameworks for it, for sure. So yeah, I'm happy to. What are some other ideas that you guys would recommend for like vetting actual partners to work with?
Well, I would say I just want to give this is unusual, but being the cynical Brit here, I'm giving the positive example of a partnership that works. And I think to your point of vetting, I think before you even vet people, which I agree entirely is really, really important. And we all, I don't know, I guess sometimes you don't even know that you have murky expectations until you go into a situation and then you're disappointed. And your disappointment is when you clarify your expectations, right? So, however, before you even do that, I think you've got to be clear, do you need a partnership or not? Is there a really big upside from it? Or, and acknowledging that this is a more complex form of relationship than you hire somebody on a fee and they do something for you and then they disappear, like somebody creates a website for you, for example, or, some marketing materials, visual stuff for selling. Sorry, explaining what marketing materials are. So I've got an example for the mastermind where there's a guy who lives in Hong Kong. Lived in Hong Kong, now in Australia. And then we've got one of the guys in the UK, and they partnered together. And that's a really, really powerful partnership. Now, why would that be? Because the guy who lives in Hong Kong has access to factories in China and is a trusted man literally on the ground, which is just impossible to do from London, and without racking up ridiculous amount of airfares. And even then, there are all sorts of ways in which traditionally, without being biased, a lot of Chinese factories will try and fool their customers to a really high level. So that's really an example, I think, of a really powerful partnership. And the reason that worked is, number one, they couldn't have done it without each other. And that's a great reason for a partnership rather than just getting a supplier. And then I think also they are aligned in what they're trying to build. They're trying to build a business and go for at least a $10 million plus exit, because they both have similar sort of expectations and time frame there. And then, of course, I guess they happen to have, they've worked together before. I think he was a supplier for the partner in Hong Kong, now in Australia, was a supplier for the mastermind member before. So they'd worked with each other as well. So they kind of vetted each other by having a prior relationship in the same area, which I think is in some ways the best way. So I want to put that forward as a really positive example of how it's, a good partnership, as you say, Chris. So, there's a lot of great potential out there.
Well, something that comes to mind is just longevity. Like I've made the case, you can't fake authenticity long-term. You can fake it short-term, but anybody that's like still in the game, anybody that's been doing port inspections in Hong Kong for 20 years has got to be fairly good and trustworthy, right? So like when people are like, oh, I don't know if I should trust this guy. Well, for Pete's sakes, he's been doing it for so long. You can't stick around if you're not trustworthy, if you're not good at what you do, if you're not providing value to either your clients, customers, or partners. And I think people should just stop overthinking it and I say this as advice for myself. Like I talk to people who are thinking of like, I need an email service, and you might think of like an email marketing service, like a MailChimp or a ConvertKit type thing. Is that really a partner? Well, it's kind of a partnership. You're trusting part of your business with a paid company. And like, which one should I use? Which one should I use? And I'm like, it doesn't matter, right? If they're still in business today, they're fine. They work. MailChimp works. ConvertKit works. Like Constant Contact works. They all work. So the hard part is just deciding, saying just pick one, right? One might be 100% of what you need. The other one might be 98. The other one might be 89. Well, picking one and moving forward is better than like that, that paralysis of like, well, who do I trust or what company should I use? And I think that's what I see most in this vetting process. It's kind of like a choosing process. And remember, like I forget who said this, but like A players are not attracted to B opportunities. So if you want a good partner, you got to have a good opportunity. You have to say, look, I need someone to actually run the entire tech side of this this part of my business, and I'm willing to give up either a lot of equity or a lot of control or something to find someone who's like an A player. And I can use the example of my ScamPower partnership. We launched it. It was me and my partner Paul. We met on, I think it was called Elance at the time. It's changed to Odesk or something. And we just kind of agreed, like, let's just become partners. We both trusted each other. We both talked a bunch of times. And he handled all the tech side and the finance side and the tax side and all the technical stuff. Like not just the computer tech side, but then like all the other, day-to-day business stuff. And I handled basically the marketing and telling people about it and showing people how good, like just the whole face of it. I still can't log in to the bank account. I still don't know how to log in to a server. When the phone scans a barcode and the data goes somewhere and the data comes back, and I don't know how any of that works, but he does. But he doesn't want to be the face of different things. So it was like clearly defined, like who's going to do what. And we just trusted each other. And we talked several times. Like he could technically at any time lock me out of the business, and there would be nothing I could do about it. But you know what? I work with people I trust, so I don't have that fear. So even though I realize, yes, that is a possibility, I don't spend 1 second of my life thinking that it would actually happen. And maybe that's a way that people can kind of come to this balancing act. Like, yes, you can acknowledge that there could be potential negatives from partnerships, but also truly not worry about it. And use me as an example of like, yes, I am in a position where something bad could go happen, but I don't worry one bit about it. I don't know that'll help anybody. I don't know if you guys are in kind of a similar situation.
I just keep thinking
like
about
that.
how you got stabbed in the back, and I'm waiting to hear the story of the backstabbing that piqued our interest.
Jason, what's going on? We've infected you with British skepticism
Super
here.
negativity, man.
Successful
I'm being
partnership.
fully British today.
Yeah, what's going on? Well, sorry, no British. No British names were harmed in the making of this program. If there are any lawyers for Britain listening, joking apart, obviously we got a successful partnership in front of us here with you guys, Kyle and Jason. Obviously, you guys have worked together for quite a few years. You've moved through from selling on Shopify to winning online to OmniRocket. Things seem to be expanding, taking off. To me, that I've worked with you guys as a client before, and your successful partnership. So, how did you guys end up working together, and how did that all pan out?
Yeah, it was it's an interesting story. So it occurred the fact that you get out there, you take action. So we did a Amazon Seller Summit, like a little conference, like a little 3-day conference here in the Seattle area, and we're like my other business partner Gary and I put it on because we were like in the Amazon space and we're doing things. We're like, hey, it'd be fun to do this event, and so we just reached out to people. And Jason was one of the guys that was kind of on our radar, and he was the Shopify guy. And be like, it'd be cool to have a keynote Shopify speaker. And so I'd known Jason tangentially before that because we worked together at the university. But he moved on into full-time e-commerce life, and we hadn't really connected much beyond that. And then we invited him to be a speaker at that event, and he came and crushed it like always. And after that, we just started talking, and we're like, hey, it would be cool to like train some people and do some teaching around Shopify and that. And that's basically how the genesis of it started. It was just an idea for training people on Shopify, and then it's gone on many different paths over the last few years, and so we're working out the best path to provide the most value for people, and that's OmniRocket in its current form.
Excellent. I feel like we should have a two-shot of you guys sitting on a sofa like those couples that chat about how they met. But so, Jason, what's your side of the story in that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the original thesis was Kyle, totally nerds out on Amazon related topics, and I nerd out on Shopify related topics, and those two seem like a wonderful combo. It seems like a natural fit. And so, I mean, that's sort of the underlying logic in my mind, is sort of the discipline, trade skill component of it. And so that's been great. I mean, it's allowed us to work back and forth. We work with clients that are omni channel sellers as it happens, and our clients typically want, expertise and help on both sides of that equation, Amazon and Shopify. And so it works really well together. I think to me, that's sort of the reason why it has worked, is because that underlying logic was sort of the original thinking, and it continues to do well today. So I think that's sort of, in my view, sort of it made sense because it was complementary skill sets. It wasn't just two people who were doing a thing, and the same thing. And I think, Chris, in your example, you didn't use the word complementary skill sets, but you kind of alluded to it with, your ScanPower partner being the technical and you being the marketer. And I think that's really probably one of the most critical things to think through is, can you find a partner that is got a set of trade skills that you don't possess, and that you have a set of trade skills that they don't possess, and it's therefore creating a interdependency in a nice way. And you're both dependent on each other for some component of the business. If you both have the same trade skills, then there's really not a logic there that demands a partnership. So, I mean, that's kind of the way I look at it, is, can you find somebody who has something to bring to the party that really adds huge value that you just don't frankly want to understand, know how to do, or you just, stuff that doesn't appeal to you that they totally love and are passionate about.
Nice. So it looks like we've got some quite solid common ground here. That sort of interdependency, that the fact that you would do better together than without each other, I guess. Guys, any takeaways for people listening if they're thinking of going to a partnership? What's the best way, apart from the things we discussed already, to try and maximize the chance that it goes well? Chris, you've mentioned already having a partnership agreement to clarify things rather than because you're afraid of being ripped off, which I completely agree with. Any other things around the sort of mechanics of it?
Honestly, it's just communication. It's just being open, honest. That's really about it. I would even make it a contract. I'd put it in a Gmail. Be like, hey, this is what we agreed with that we're going to do, and just kind of leave it at that. Don't make it too complicated. You can overcomplicate it. I give you a really long, complicated answer, but
that's good. Okay.
Don't make it complicated. Be clear. Be open. Be honest. Like if you like, I'm never going to learn the tech side. Like it's.
Yeah.
So to find someone who can do the tech side,
yeah.
And I forget who. I guess you would call ScanPower it was originally my idea. Could it have ever happened without a partnership? Absolutely not. I would never. I still don't know how to like make iOS apps and upload them and update them, and I'm never going to. Right? I know that about myself. It's certainly not impossible, but it's not something that is my skill, talent, passion. No, I would happily give up half of the idea to find somebody who can make it work. And when you find someone who doesn't want to be the face of it, doesn't want to do marketing, doesn't want, it's perfect. You just kind of outline the descriptions and you move forward. And if things change, you communicate as things change. We're dealing with people here. This shouldn't be that hard.
I like it. Well, so it's the ultra keep it simple, classic Chris Green approach there. So Kyle, it sounded like you had a slightly more sort of structured approach, or you were at least wanting one. Any thoughts on that to take away for people?
I just think it's good to have clarity of what you want before you go into anything, and just be clear of what you bring to the table, what they bring to the table, and accountability. That's really what it kind of comes down to. If everyone's doing what they say they're going to do, then everything works well.
Sounds very good. And Jason, any final thoughts on that one?
No, I mean, I think those are great. Communication and accountability, those are the key underpinnings of it. You've got to be able to, effectively connect and work through issues. Because as in all things, there's always going to be points of clarity that need to be brought to the party. You got to be able to get through that stuff. And, I think that the other thing I would just say is test small and find your way through it. Do a small project with somebody, see how it goes, and then go from there. there's no reason to, jump in, all the way with something that seems dramatic or risky, when you can just collaborate with people and see how it feels, see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you on that. And the truth is that that's how you guys started, for example. So that's a good example. The only thing I would say, and this is maybe reflecting my partnership mistakes rather than necessarily things that other people fall into, but I have seen it quite a lot with my clients, and that's this. Both partners do all things, and there isn't a clear division of responsibility. And the more, to your points, really, Jason, and yours, Chris, that the more you have complementary and different skill sets, like you were clearly the marketing and the face of the brand, and your partner there, Chris, for example, was the backroom boy who was making everything work. And you got minimal chance of both doing the same thing. And I've heard that. I remember Perry Belcher talking about this. He was pretty serious e-commerce operator at one point, and said they were going around in sort of what he called a pod with Ryan Dice and some pretty serious people, and they were all kind of doing the same things at the same time. And he said when they sat down and divided up the work properly, then it was a lot more efficient use of the people. So that's one thing I would say that I've seen a lot worth looking out for. Well, folks, we ought to wrap it up here, but a very interesting discussion. I like it. It's more, it ranges from the just do it, Chris Green end towards the sort of vet people, Kyle Hamer end. I'm more towards the Kyle Hamer end. It's very interesting, but either which way, there's lots of positive partnerships that I think we've all experienced. So, Chris, let's just go quickly around the table to make sure people can connect if they want to get hold of anyone. Chris, presumably people find you at chrisgreen.com. Are there any other places that people should get hold of you on the internet?
No, go with just one, because they have to remember more than one. They're going to forget both. So
True.
chrisgreen.com. You can find everything that I'm doing there.
Excellent. And Kyle and Jason, I guess you guys are omnirocket.com these days. Is that right?
Yeah,
That's it.
Amazing. So if you want to get Shopify and or Amazon advice, those guys are the place to go. And then if you want to be more Amazon focused and you're on this side of the pond, Michael Veazey, that's me. I'm at amazingfba.com. So guys, been excellent discussion of an interesting area. So thank you very much for listening. If you are listening, don't forget to subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple, or whatever else you can subscribe on these days. And if you're on Apple or on Spotify, don't forget to give us a rating out of 5 stars as well. It really helps us to reach other people. Thanks a lot for listening.